Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in to another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. You're on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app. And
for the first time ever, I guess not maybe the first time ever, but we are live on YouTube.
Yes, streaming the show, Full Court Press, on YouTube.
Yeah, we've been kind of doing this behind the scenes. That's why we've kind of cheekily alluded to doing video in the near future. But and the reason we're doing this today, and it's probably going to be a quick one-time thing before a full rollout in the future. Today's show is going to be shortened to about 10 minutes, at least on the radio.
Yes.
So that's a big reason why we're actually throwing the full live stream out publicly, is so that we can, because we've done like some makeup podcasts, and we're going to still put this on the podcast feed. So for those of you who listen primarily on podcasts, you won't have noticed too much of a difference already because we've already uploaded it. But we're also live streaming it on YouTube. This is going to be it's part of moving into the future.
Yeah. We've been live testing this for a couple of weeks now. And so you can find it on The Fan KLGN, at The Fan KLGN. That's the YouTube channel. So we'll be on there even after we go off the air for a little bit because, we've got a college basketball game. It's Purdue and Michigan.
So, is Michigan the new number one? Somebody overtook Arizona, and I can't remember if it was
question.
Michigan,
I can't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, so basically, and especially with this video, we're kind of hoping that it'll help us to not, especially during this time of the year. Where
Michigan is number one.
Yeah, we've got shows that we want to do, and it's why we're doing these extra podcasts. We have a lot that we want to go over. A lot of people obviously like to follow our show, and so we want to be able to have, in addition to just kind of being fun, to have video. Which means now I have to I always wear these blue light glasses, but I mainly wear them because nobody can see me. But now people can see me, and everyone probably thinks I wear glasses. But yeah, so those of you who want to go watch us, if you dare, to watch our faces.
You're gluttons for punishment, I guess.
You can check us out there.
Yeah, so at The Fan KLGN on YouTube. So short and show here on the over-the-air portion. So let's get right to it, Jason. Debate continues to go on, and it seems to be getting a little bit louder over who is the player of the year in the Mountain West. There are a number of good candidates. Two of those are wearing Utah State jerseys. And for a good chunk of the season, there was discussion is it MJ Collins or is it Mason Foslev? And it was really just between those two guys. But there are a number of other players who are having solid seasons and are worth considering as players that may deserve to be recognized as the player of the year. Now, by and large, the voting trend is to give it to the best player on the best team. And if you were to go by that as your baseline, then the award should go to Mason Foslev. Yeah, MJ Collins does a lot too. He scores a lot. But when you look at total body of work, total impact on the game, for me, it's a no-brainer that it's Mason Foslev over MJ Collins. But when you look and you expand that out further, rather than just let's not just use that as a criteria, best player on best team. Let's try to weed this out and figure out who is the best player, who deserves to be the Mountain West Player of the Year. And Jason, you put a little poll out there on social media, try to gauge people's interest in a blind poll. And there are some good candidates. Looking at that, it was kind of hard for me to determine who would I vote for if I didn't see the name in the jersey. Yeah. Just the raw stats. Who would I place my vote for?
Yeah, I wanted to eliminate bias as much as possible, which is why I went with conference-only stats, and then I adjusted them per minute. So, if somebody really wanted to figure out who these players were, they could. But I wanted to make it hard because I wanted this to be a blind poll. So, Eric, I've not told anybody who these four players are.
Yeah, I have no idea.
So, and
especially when you took out Steals.
Yeah.
I'm I don't know.
I wanted to include Steals, but the poll, I had to if you are really following closely on Twitter last night, you might have seen me post and repost this poll. But if I went over the 280 character, kind of initial limit, the poll wouldn't show up as part of the post. So I was really annoyed by that. And so I had to like cut out a lot of words, which included cutting out steals. Of course, most of these players were pretty close in steals anyway. It was like 1.2 versus 1.5. So like, it's not, that huge of a deal. But these, I'm going to really quickly list off these stats. It's on my Twitter, X Twitter, like if you want to kind of get an overall, because reading off a bunch of numbers is really hard to follow along with on radio and even on video where we don't have a nice little video graphic to show. But essentially I have 4 players. And the first one averages 17.5 points, 4.7 rebounds, 1.9 assists, and has a 12.1 box plus minus, which is kind of a catch-all metric trying to measure.
That's what BPM is.
Yeah, box plus minus.
I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's a catch-all metric. I was really working against this character limit.
Okay.
It didn't like me. So that's player 1. Player 2, 15.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, just shy of 3 assists, and an 11.2 box plus minus. Player 3, 18.3 points. Again, these are per 30 minutes. So 18.3 points, 2.5 rebounds, just shy of 2.5 assists, and a 7.0 box plus minus. And player 4, 16.2 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists, and an 8.5 box plus minus. And all these players, they're all very close in the shooting metric that I chose. True shooting percentage was another means to kind of try and hide a little bit of the, because sometimes you can just go look at somebody's shooting percentages and you'd be able to figure out who it is, and then bias would play a factor. So that's why I went with true shooting a little bit. They're all really close. They range basically from 64.6 true shooting percentage to 65.6. Like they're all within like 1% of each other in true shooting. They are all efficient players. They're all guards. So Eric, do you have any guesses as to which player is which?
No. I can tell you who I voted for.
Yeah. So who did you vote for?
I voted for the number 2, whoever was in number 2.
Okay. So here are the results so far. There's still about 2.5 hours left. If those of you watching can go vote now that you're going to have the bias part of it. But player 1, so this is the guy averaging 17.5 points, just under 5 rebounds, just under 2 assists, and has the highest box plus minus. It's Corey Camper Jr. of Nevada, who received 44% of the vote.
Wow.
A player that nobody is talking about for Mountain West Player of the Year, but his efficiency, production, and even catch-all metrics suggest he's one of the best players in the Mountain West. Nobody's talking about him because he plays for Nevada.
Yeah.
Player number 2, this is the guy you voted for. 15.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, just shy of 3 assists, the second best box plus minus. That's Mason Falslev.
Okay.
So, and he got also 44% of the vote. So we're sitting at a tie right now.
Ooh.
Between Corey Camper and between Mason Falslev. Number 3, again, over 18 points, 2.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and the lowest box plus minus of any of these 4 players.
This is a kid out of UNLV?
Yeah, it's Draw Gibbs Lawhorn.
Okay.
And then player 4 is Jake Hall, who received 1% of the vote. So like 1 or 2 people have voted for him at this point. Like maybe we're maxing out at 2 people have voted for him in this poll. We're at about 150 votes. My very widely, reached Twitter poll. But yeah, a lot of people voting for Mason Falslev just kind of based on the blind poll. But a lot of people not realizing that Corey Camper should probably be getting some consideration. I couldn't include as many people as I would have liked. I would have liked to include like MJ Collins, Tomislav Buljan from New Mexico, Drew Fielder. I actually initially had Drew Fielder, and then I kind of subbed him out for Jake Hall. But mostly because like people might have figured out it was Drew Fielder because his rebounding numbers
would be so big.
Like they could have figured out it was him pretty quickly. So it wasn't so much that I didn't think he was a candidate. It's just, again, I was really working to try, and I was mostly trying to see if I could catch people voting for Corey Camper, because I think he deserves a little more consideration. I think he deserves more consideration than Jake Hall does, and probably as much, if not more, than Draw Gibbs Lawhorn, because he's with this draw, like he's playing spectacularly in the last couple of weeks, but a lot of his is like a couple of games where he's just been absolutely fantastic, but there's a lot of games where he's middling, and his impact on winning is questionable at times.
Well, and that's the thing for me, impact on winning. And yes, he can get a lot of stats, but is his team winning a lot of games?
Yeah.
And that's where Mason stands out because he makes game-winning plays for his team. And sometimes that doesn't show up in a box score. But Utah State's going to have a chance to see Longhorn, or excuse me, Camper Jr. coming up on Saturday. The Aggies go to Nevada. So interesting poll there. But stay on with the podcast and stay with us on YouTube as we continue. But our over-the-air show is now done.
The home for Aggie Sports, Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, and online at 1069thefan.com. The Fan.
Hey, it's me, the regular dad. I ask guys like you a few questions, a kind of parenting test. So here goes. What is this sound? Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? That's the sound a young teenager makes when he's done something he regrets. Maybe he got caught up in peer pressure, tried a few drinks at a party, and the next morning, well, he makes this sound. Kind of a sad sound, isn't it? Hear the embarrassment, the reluctance, the pulling away? If you recognized it, then you know exactly what to do. Listen. It might take a long time, a drive together, or a walk that turns into a talk, and that turns into an arm around his shoulder that means you understand. That's when you can really talk, when he knows you understand. Then the both of you can figure out how not to make the same mistake again. I know it's tough. Keep at it. You're doing great.
This message brought to you by The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Welcome back on the podcast and on YouTube as we continue. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan on the Full Court Press. Just a reminder as we transition for just a moment here about Young Power Sports of Logan. We didn't have a real chance to get into the text line. Young Power Sports sponsors our text line. But reminder about them, we're finally getting snow, new snow in the mountains. So make sure your ride is serviced properly. They've got Cache Valley's largest and most complete power sports service shop at Young Power Sports Logan. They service all brands, all makes, all sizes, motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, and more. No guesswork, no shortcuts, just trained technicians who fix it right the first time. Get in quickly, in and out, get it done right, guaranteed. And you can schedule your service now by calling 755-7111. That's 435-755-7111. So this interesting dialogue about player of the year in the Mountain West. Utah State has a couple of guys that could be in the discussion. Nevada's got a guy. UNLV has a guy. Certainly San Diego State with B.J. Davis is.
And B.J. Davis, like I saw, I think it was Brady Clark put out like his All Mountain West team, and his initial draft of first team, second team, and third team didn't include a single San Diego State player. And it kind of shows that San Diego State doesn't really have a single individual that stands out in like a first team All Mountain West sense, at least by our typical eye test points per game type thinking that we tend to default to. But I really think that a guy like B.J. Davis has a case for first team All Mountain West. Either him or Miles Davis, Reese Dixon Waters, like one of those three should probably be first team All Mountain West. Because they do have an impact that goes beyond the fact that they all average like 10 points per game. Like we celebrate Draw Gibbs Longhorn when he goes for 36, but struggles on the defensive end. I think he's second in the conference in fouls this season, where he fouls a lot. His defense isn't particularly fantastic, and his stats don't translate to winning nearly as much as some of these other guys. These other guys, when they're on the court, their teams do better. UNLV is outscored by 42 points when Draw Gibbs Longhorn is on the court.
Yeah, that's rough.
And before you blame his teammates, he's third worst on UNLV in that stat. So like most of his teammates have a better plus minus. So you can't blame his teammates because he's the common denominator. Not to say that he's a bad player, but there are other players that I would put above him and that you'd rather have because they're having an impact on winning more so than him. And again, someone like B.J. Davis, Grand Canyon, their power forward, whose name I keep butchering
Henley.
all the time. Henley's, in there where he's one of the top guys in the conference. So Like, it's why this player of the year conversation, everyone kind of defaults to Mason Falslev. And there are some aspects of that thinking that I don't like, because I'm not always a fan of best player, best team, because that's not always the right way to think of this. Like, if you're looking at player of the year, well, who's the best player? Is it actually Mason Falslev? If your argument is he's the best player on the best team, I don't think that's a good enough argument. Now, you turn to the analytics and you turn to his, a lot of that stuff, you do see a really good case for Mason Falslev. And that's the one where I'm more accepting of that. It's like,
yeah,
I'm not trying to say there isn't a case for Mason Falslev, but if your argument falls down to best player, best team, you haven't articulated a good argument. So you need to be able to put together that case. And some of it comes down to film. Some of it comes down to eye test. Some of it just does come down to stats. He is leading the Mountain West or near the top of the Mountain West and a lot of different things. And then impact metrics. Absolutely love him. And I trust a lot of those impact metrics. And so when you see a combination of all those different things, Mason Falslev overall builds an incredibly compelling case. While other guys, again, Bullion with New Mexico, one of the more underrated guys, Corey Camper, as we said during kind of the live portion, in my opinion, one of the more underrated guys. Draw gives Lawhorn, despite some of the impact metrics, not being a huge fan of him, I think he ought to be in the conversation with how he's played during the Mountain West portion, because I bring up UNLV being outscored by 42 with him on the court. A lot of that goes back to non-conference, where UNLV really struggled and had some blowout losses. So I think if I had access to Mountain West only plus minus, I think he'd probably be a little bit better. So he should certainly be in the conversation there. But yeah, there's a lot of different players. But I think in the end, when you start splitting the hairs that kind of have to be split for the Mountain West Player of the Year conversation, you do end up leaning toward Mason Falslev above everyone else.
Yeah, because there are guys who are better scorers, who are probably higher impact scorers. There are guys who are better rebounders. There are guys who assist more. But when you put the total package together, what Mason is, that for me, it's not really much of a discussion in my mind because of his impact on winning for his team. Offensive metrics, defensive metrics, hustle, heart. There are just a lot of things that Mason does has contributed to Utah State being the best team in the Mountain West right now.
Yeah.
So Utah State, the other part of the discussion about player of the year, maybe it's slightly different when you look at other leagues, especially professional leagues, when they discuss most valuable player. There's always this discussion like, well, what would the team be like if you took that player away? Like, would they still be a good team without that player? Or is the team be good because of that one guy or whomever it is?
Yeah.
If you remove that player from the equation, what does that team look like overall? And what makes that player so valuable to that team or to the league? And if you take Mason Falslev out of Utah State's lineup, the Aggies are still good. Are they the top team? Probably not. But everything that he does to help his team win, it's not just the best player on the best team. This is the best player because of everything that he does.
Yeah. I once upon a time looked at that, the most valuable and valuable to your team. And at one point I kind of subscribed to that way back when, but I've really soured on that argument in the last few years because it's not the most valuable to your team award. And going on these like conspiracy theory-esque deconstructions of the word valuable is completely reductionist to the conversation.
Yeah. We're splitting hairs. We're way too myopic.
It's most valuable player. It's best player in the league. Best season. Like, don't go overboard on nitpicking what the word exactly means. It's the best player in the league award. The Heisman. Is the Heisman like, are we deconstructing the parts of the word Heisman to try and figure out what it is? No, it's an MVP award, i.e. best player of the season. And defensive player of the year. Are we, is that person not valuable? Like, because the word valuable isn't in it, do we suddenly deconstruct that race, as far as value to the defense? Like, let's not get hung up over what the award is called. It's the best player in the league. Now, there is a nuance because when you look at Mason Falslev's metrics, you look at his impact metrics. I mentioned Draw Gibbs Lawhorn being minus 42 on the season. Mason Falslev like plus 261 when he's on the court for how much Utah State is outscoring opponents. But Mason gets a heck of a lot of help in that category by having, MJ Collins. Drake Allen, he's up there. I think he's like top 5 at least, maybe even top 3 in his personal plus minus when he's on or off the court. And so as a result, impact metrics like Evan Mia have him as the second or third best player in the league. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. In fact, I'll tell you, I don't believe that. I think he's more impactful than I think even a lot of Aggie fans give him credit for, largely because of his defense. And so long as he's not turning it over, his overall potential offensive impact. But his impact metrics are helped a lot by the fact that he's part of a good team. And players that are part of good teams, it's a, you tide, lifts all ships type of things with the analytics. And it's part of why I don't just go by the gospel for analytics, for or against a player. I'm not going to, hold Mason Falslev in this godlike tier the way the analytics are kind of having him as, where he's like in his own tier in analytics, while they're holding down Draw Gibbs Lawhorn because he's part of a bad team or a mediocre team. Inconsistent, really. So that's kind of where analytics can be up and down, is that Mason is helped a ton by his teammates, but still with even with that maybe hanging against his analytics, and you got to kind of hold that with a grain of salt. You still have a player who is obviously having an impact on winning, his offense and his defense. As you mentioned, a little bit of everything. One of the best scorers, one of the best rebounders, at least as far as guards in wings. One of the better playmakers still, even though he's not a pure point guard, at least especially among the wings. He's one of the better playmakers. He's one of the better defenders, close to or maybe still leading the conference in steals, and has a good defensive impact, even though he's guarding some of the faster players where he's guarding on the perimeter. But he also ends up guarding bigger guys in the post sometimes, where he has to ball deny in the post, not allow guys to get mismatches on him, where a lot of times you don't notice that aspect because he's doing a good enough job that they don't get the ball into the post to the guy he's guarding. Because a big aspect of defense is just straight up prevention. Yeah. You don't want Mason Falslev to be going mano-a-mano against somebody in the post. So he prevents that situation from happening with his defense. And that goes unnoticed because it's happening away from the ball and on the other side of the court. You don't notice how good of a job he's doing on defense. Same thing goes for Zach Keller too. I'll point that out. But Mason Falslev doing a lot of those things off the ball. And again, part of the Utah State system. So again, in the end, Mason, I think, has built the best case, and it goes beyond best player, best team, because I don't want to subscribe to that notion. Yeah. Because again, it's just it's way too shallow, and it's why I get annoyed at Mountain West coaches who should know better, that they keep just voting best player, best team, and it's robbed at least 2 different deserving Mountain West Player of the Year candidates of being Player of the Year. Neemiah Queta, and then, to be perfectly honest, Jaden Ledee. Like, those were the 2 best players in seasons where they were runner-up for Player of the Year, but instead it went to, I think, Matt Bradley and, Great Osborne. So I guess both schools have benefited and also gotten robbed.
Been victims, yeah.
So that's where we talk about it evens out eventually. But, those 2 votes for those players were best player, best team. And in my opinion, both were wrong because somebody else was the better player in that season. I think there's only been one case I can remember in recent years where they voted for somebody who wasn't best player, best team, and it was Omari Moore, who took San Jose to 5th place in the conference, which was apparently so spectacular, San Jose getting to 5th place, that was worthy of getting Omari Moore Mountain West Player of the Year. But that year, he averaged 18, 5, and 5. And was also a great defender, went to the NBA. I don't think he's still in the NBA, but he was an NBA caliber wing. So that was kind of interesting. But in most years I've been covering the Mountain West, it's best player, best team. And it's probably going to go that way if Utah State wins the conference. Although if San Diego State wins the conference, I think they'll be one of the first Mountain West teams in a while, at least the second Mountain West team in the last 7 or 8 years, who won't have the Mountain West Player of the Year, even if they're the regular season title winner.
Yeah. We are actually getting some texts over the course of this as
There we
we
go.
keep rolling on YouTube. 9315 saying, can't wait to see the deflator on Full On Regalia on the Fan YouTube live stream.
Yeah, do I look good?
Well, the deflator...
Oh yeah, the deflator is Ajay.
That's Ajay.
He'll probably be on the show at some point.
That's French dip.
I look whiter than normal. I can see the video stream. I look white as white gets, which is actually fairly accurate. But Eric's a little bit more red and human looking.
Looking.
I look like Mark Zuckerberg lost his tan. Like that's my skin complexion on the stream right now.
A couple of the texts: rising tides might lift all boats, but to get ahead or be the highest boat, you just need to be the bigger, faster boat. If not, then you're stuck with the rest.
I mean, that's what Mason Falls said. Like Drake Allen, MJ Collins, they all have spectacular stats, but like there are aspects that moves Mason Falslev ahead of MJ Collins. Like MJ Collins used to be ahead of Mason Falslev, and they've been kind of going back and forth as far as who is the best player in Utah State and who's more likely to get that Mountain West Player of the Year award.
Yeah, and then there's another question that I've been wondering: will Mason be the Player of the Year that never got Player of the Week?
Yeah,
Has this happened before?
So I had been under the impression that Sam Merrill, but I think I was looking back at Mountain West Player of the Weeks, and I think he did actually win it once. The year he was
in the year that he won Player of the Year.
So I think I misspoke on a couple of previous shows where I mentioned that. Maybe I need to double check, do the old Aaron Rodgers, but Mason may end up being the first where I thought Sam Merrill had done it, but he might have won it like the last week of the regular season where he hadn't been winning it, and then all of a sudden everyone realized, oh yeah, Sam Merrill's clearly the best player in the Mountain West. And nobody really put up a fuss about it. But yeah, Player of the Week, it's about how well do you perform in a 2-game stretch. And if you just always have like 19 or 18 or 21 points, then the guy who in that 1 week scores 25 and 30, he's going to win Player of the Week over you. And it's going to happen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it goes. And yeah, Player of the Week is very much what kind of stat line did you put up in a 2-game stretch. And if you just always put up a good stat line, you're the best player over the course of a season, but maybe you're never the best player in the course of a 2-game stretch, 1 week.
Yeah, because Mason has had great 2-game stretches, but it just so happened that there was another player who had just an even better 2-game stretch that week, and so he missed out. So I don't know if it'd be interesting to reach out to the Mountain West and see if they would have any information.
They post the archives of who's won Player of the Week are available on their website. That's where I was able to kind of like go back and see that again. I was potentially wrong in what I said earlier. So you can go back and check who won Player of the Week for every single week since they've been handing it out since I forget when.
That's for a while.
Yeah, it's obviously been a while.
Mountain West action tonight. We got 4 games on the docket and one pretty spicy game that could be interesting. I'm a little surprised at the Vegas line on this though. The predicted margin of victory. So it starts out at 6:30. Fresno State's at Wyoming. Wyoming favored by 9.5. This was another one that kind of surprises me. Fresno State is 6-8 in conference play. Wyoming's only 4-10. But Wyoming's favored by 9.5.
I think Wyoming, with their record and it being at home, like their record's a bit deceptive because they've been a little banged up. They're getting some players back. I should probably check the injury report availability because they've been missing Gavin Gore. But lately they've had some guys that are really starting to emerge a little bit better. And, Leland Walker is he's a dangerous guy. Like, I know his stats and his ability haven't led to winning very much, but Wyoming is a dangerous team, especially at home. You got a Fresno team, in California going to altitude. That's, the biggest disparity you can pretty much have for a Mountain West team going to Wyoming. It's way worse than, when Utah State or Colorado State or Air Force go, because it's just a couple thousand feet as opposed to all 7,000 feet.
Right.
So Wyoming being 9.5, that's maybe a bit extreme, because Fresno is also kind of a sneaky better team than 12 and 13. I think this will be a fairly close game, provided Fresno isn't severely impacted by that altitude and by some of their own health struggles of late.
For the good of the conference, Fresno State needs to win this
one. Nothing matters.
Fresno, metrics favor Fresno, I guess.
Like I don't see how for the good of the conference goes in either direction for this one.
The other game after that, shortly after that, is at 7 o'clock. New Mexico hosting Air Force. Lobos by 27.5.
Yeah,
and I might take the Lobos to cover.
Yeah, you just might. Air Force is just such a hapless team. Like, you know, it's honestly kind of a really good thing for the Aggies. They don't have to face them twice because it just drags down their strength of schedule so much. Like Utah State might end up, if they're the top team in the conference, will probably still, you know, even where they didn't have to play themselves twice, their conference strength of schedule will probably still be like 10th or 9th, solely based off the fact they didn't have to play Air Force twice, even though they don't have the difficulty schedule buff that others get by playing Utah State. So, yeah, this one, it'll be a blowout. It'll be a blowout by a lot. New Mexico will essentially get an elongated bye where they didn't have to play Saturday, and they, you know, as long as they show up, their starters will get to play 25 minutes in a blowout of Air Force.
I just pulled up the net rankings, and maybe I should have looked at this before, but Wyoming sitting at 101 in the net, Fresno State at 136. So maybe it is better for Wyoming to be the team that wins.
Yeah, but they're not really close to any sort of like tipping point as far. I mean, I guess
if you can always say you have X number of teams in the top 100.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of nice.
So in that sense,
it's really only important when you get into the top 30. Technically, that's what really matters.
Yeah,
or top 50.
Well, the line that you'd be looking for Wyoming to hit is top 75.
Yes.
If they can get top 75, Utah State winning there becomes a quad one game.
Right.
It's not going to happen, but so in that sense, yeah, for the good of the conference, you probably lean toward Wyoming, so you can have another top 100 team. You know, that you put another notch on your belt for having a top 100 team. So yeah, I'll give you that one. It's a very small for the good of the conference, but it does
exist. It's about
exist.
A coin flip. Yeah,
I'll give you that one.
8 o'clock, Utah State's future opponent on Saturday, Nevada. They're on the road at San Jose State. No national broadcast for any of these three games so far, but
and I can see why.
The Nevada Wolfpack, they're favored by 10.5 at San Jose.
Which feels a bit low. I know San Jose has been a little tough, especially at home, their cavernous arena. But yeah, Nevada's winning all of the games that they're supposed to, and they're just losing the marquee matchups. Nevada's worst hiccup outside of, you know, losing to marquee teams, maybe losing to Boise State, but, you know, Boise State's been up and down, but like they won by just 1 point at Fresno. Like that's the one time they've really slipped up. So, and again, they didn't really slip up because they won that game. So yeah. I don't know if I can qualify it completely as a slip up, but still, like Nevada should be winning this one and should be winning it fairly comfortably.
But the game of the night is the nightcap. Also at 8 o'clock, this will be nationally broadcast on CBS Sports Network. Grand Canyon, excuse me. Sorry, I was fighting a sneeze. Grand Canyon at San Diego State. And again, 8 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Aztecs favored by 8.5.
And that's a decently wide margin. Like Grand Canyon has kind of struggled on the road. You look at some of their road results, they've not done as well. You know, when they go out on the road, which, you know, bodes well for when the Aggies face them in their own arena in a week or so here.
Yeah, 3 of their 4 conference losses, or I guess 3 of their 5 conference losses, were on the road. At New Mexico, at Nevada in overtime when they totally fumbled the bag.
Yeah.
Then they lost in a close one at UNLV. And so those are some of the games that, you know, 2 of their losses are close games, down to the wire games that they just couldn't finish on the road. But San Diego State, they're getting back to full strength. Magoon Guath is back, and he's making his presence known. I think that'll be a really interesting matchup, Magoon Guath versus Grand Canyon with their size and what they can do in the post.
Yeah, Magoon Guath is just far and away, at least if the same Magoon Guath who showed up against it was Nevada, where he played like 13 minutes and had like 5 blocks. And, you know, he had 3 3-pointers in that game and then had like 5 blocks. So he had a cup of coffee, scored like 13 points, 5 blocks. And if that Magoon Guath, then you're probably still going to be on a minutes restriction, I imagine. So he's probably not going to play much more than like 20 minutes. But his impact far outweighs Grand Canyon's bigs, where a lot of those bigs, like it's the fact that they are, well, they live up to the name bigs. They provide a lot of problems by just having all of that length. Because again, remember the Utah State game where it wasn't so much that one big was particularly menacing, at least on offense. A lot of it just came down to Utah State having to put so much energy into boxing them out and trying to move them out of the paint that it opened up the door for their wings and guards to end up having spectacular games. And then obviously you had the one big who, swatted, 6 shots and goaltended 3 others against the Aggies.
Yes.
So, but Magoon Guath, like if he's in there, you don't have to, the rest of San Diego State's bigs, they don't have to dedicate a ton of energy to those bigs. And so that leaves Grand Canyon vulnerable in a lot of other areas. Mind you, they still managed to pull it off, albeit controversially, in their home arena. But San Diego State, where again, they've gotten a little bit better, I think, over the last little bit, they've gotten healthier. I don't think they actually had Magoon Guath for that Grand Canyon game. I think that was one of the first games that he'd actually started missing, or at least didn't play a whole ton in that game, if I remember correctly. But
I will tell you.
Yeah, I think San Diego State should be able to.
No, he did not play.
Yeah, did not play. So I think this will be
it was decided by 1-point game.
There's those free throws by Mekhi Williams at the end where he got
that's right.
allegedly fouled, at least according to the referee.
Yeah.
So I think that will be a big deciding factor. I don't remember if LZ Harrington is back as well, but even without him, they've got enough support on the wings, and getting Magoon Guath to bolster their big, the depth there is huge for them. So I think
Guath is such a unique player where he's big and he has such a presence at protecting the rim, but he'll float out and he can defend the 3 just as good as anybody.
He's the most unfair big in the conference when he's playing and when he's good. Cause he can, he's not a dominating physical presence inside on offense just cause he's a little bit lanky.
Yeah.
He's not a toothpick, but he's
not big. He's not bulky.
Yeah.
But he is long and he's rangy and he's surprisingly fast at
he's
how
also
quickly
athletic.
he can move.
He can put the ball on the deck and then drive to the basket. That's another thing that makes him really unfair. So I think that's going to be a big thing that gives gives San Diego State an advantage over Grand Canyon. To be honest, it's part of why I really favor San Diego State to beat the Aggies in a couple weeks, because they're likely going to have Magoon Guath back for that game. So looking forward to watching this San Diego State Grand Canyon game. I will be doing whatever I can to turn the TV on and make sure I'm watching at least most of this game, just to see how this matchup plays out. And for the good of the conference, San Diego State's got to come away with this one.
Yes, they do. They can't really afford many other slip-ups in conference play because they are on the outside looking in. Some brackets have them in, but they're among the last ones in. So San Diego State and New Mexico both need to stack wins. They can't afford to slip up against anybody lower than them in the standings.
Yeah, so San Diego State, I'll say this. They are on the inside, but just barely. Mm-hmm. They're on the bubble. They are one of the last 4 in. They're the second to last of the last 4 in. Missouri is the one team that's behind them, where San Diego State, of the 70 brackets, or the 113 brackets, that are currently on Bracket Matrix, our go-to for the consensus on bracketology. San Diego State's in 70 of those 113. Missouri's in 67. New Mexico, they're in only 13. They are the last team in the first 4 out. So it's TCU, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, and New Mexico. Those are the teams that are pretty much the consensus first 4 out among all the bracketeers. And Utah State, they've moved up to a 7 seed by the consensus in these 113 brackets, just barely. And heck, they're actually kind of tied with Wisconsin, who's the first 8 seed. Their average bracket placement is 7.42, and Utah State's is 7.42. So they're actually kind of tied. They're really straddling that edge between a 7 and 8 seed, which in the language of the committee means that Utah State is either an 8 seed or a 9 seed.
Yeah.
Where that's kind of the conventional wisdom of bracketology, is where they have them, where the bracketologists have them, move them down a seed line, and that's where the committee will put them.
Utah State should be a lock, but they're not quite a lock. I think they still need a few more wins, and then they're a lock, no matter what else happens. The
number that Jared Calhoun has been talking about, and he's gotten feedback from actually some bracketologists that he's talked to, and just his own thoughts, is that 25 wins is the number. Utah State, they're 22 in 3 right now?
21-3.
Oh, they're 22-3.
Okay, I guess it depends on if they
Like
count
that's their overall record.
the lower division school as a
And
win.
I think they're counting that because they're saying 25 wins. They need 25 wins, so 22, 21, not including the
Westminster game.
The Westminster game. Get 3 more wins. So the thing is, beat Boise State. So you basically win all of your home games, and then beat UNLV, and you are definitely a lock. If you start saying, well, you only win your home games and you only win 3 more and just barely get to that 25 win mark, well, that means losing at Nevada, at San Diego State, and getting swept by UNLV. And then you're starting to really count things that are happening in the conference tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you make it to the championship game, then you're likely fine because you're picking up a couple quad 2, maybe even quad 1 games, depending on who you play in the Mountain West Championship. But you're potentially losing a game in the championship. You know, if you can't beat Nevada, San Diego State, and UNLV on the road, like, can you beat some of these teams on a neutral court? So, well, if Utah State only wins 3 more games, you're really counting what they do in the Mountain West tournament, and you're sweating it out on Selection Sunday. You win 4 games, again, you're pretty much a lock. You win 5 of these, last, 6 games, yeah, you don't even necessarily have to show up to the Mountain West tournament.
Certainly, then you're playing for seeding in the NCAA
that's
tournament.
basically what you'd be looking for there.
Yeah.
You go 6-0, then you're looking at potentially 7 seed. You'd probably
Fringe 6,
you'd probably
maybe
be a 6 seed according to Bracket Matrix. But again, we're talking about what the committee will do versus what bracketologists are willing to put the Aggies at. So that's where you'd be looking at a lock to be a 7 seed if you went 6-0 in these last few games, because you're picking up multiple quad 1 wins. Again, the rest of the way, the Aggies are playing quad 1 and quad 2 games every game from here on out. So you add 6 quad 1, quad 2 games plus 1 or 2 quad 1, quad 2 games wins in the Mountain West tournament, depending on how the Aggies perform. Yeah, that's a really nice resume. But again, the magic minimum number of total wins is 25. Bump that to 26 to feel comfortable about it, but 25 wins pretty much just about gets you in the NCAA tournament. It'll be in Dayton, but you'll be in.
Yeah. Speaking of seed lines and things like that, text coming in from 9315 saying that he heard Ken Palm on a radio station that saying that what Coach Jared Calhoun is doing, like what he did with playing to the end with the Memphis game, was the best, most effective thing to do to help with your seed line when you go dancing.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this yesterday, where with things like the net and with KenPom and KPI, like all of these team sheet metrics, Bartorvik's in there. Like, to be honest, the 2 metrics that I know that tends to kind of eliminate that garbage time, back and forth, Haslametrics and Evan Mia, they're not on the team sheets that the NCAA committee looks at. And, the committee, like, they'll probably be vaguely aware that Utah State ran the score up against Memphis because it's been in the headlines.
Yeah.
So that actually may or may not end up working against them, because they'll be like, well, how real are these rankings? But still.
Yeah, those things look at offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. Like, how well did you perform above what was expected going into the game?
Yeah.
And so, there's Jared Calhoun's right. I mean, he knows this stuff. He pays attention to this stuff. He knows, and he felt like he got maybe a little bit burned earlier in the season when they didn't. So now every chance that they have, sportsmanship is out the window. Unfortunately, it's all about playing the game that's in front of you. And that's not just what's happening on the court.
Yeah, and it's style points, because the NCAA with college basketball is such a numbers-driven sport. Like, more so than any other sport, really, at any level. Like, obviously, analytics and stats are used in so many of these sports. There's a whole book on what baseball did.
Yeah, I was going to say baseball is very analytic.
But, like, that's just, a lot of it comes down to individual players and sometimes team metrics, but it's not about, like, they're using these analytics to determine who's the best team, because it's about record. Just, what's your record? In basketball, it's so much down to, well, who did you beat? How much did you beat them by? What's your offensive efficiency, defensive, strength of schedule? What's your KenPom? What's your net? What's your opponent's strength of schedule? it is such a numbers and analytics based league in terms of team rankings. That's where it really sets itself apart. And so in baseball, if you're leading by 15 runs and it goes down to a 1-run game, you win 15-14, it makes for a slightly more interesting recap article, but nobody really freaks out about it and nobody cares in the end. And 2 weeks later, nobody thinks, well, the Cubs aren't actually that good of a team because they only beat the Rangers by 1 or something like that. They blew that lead. It's like, no, they won the game, and that's all that matters. And in college football, a lot of times there can still be some nitpicking because of what happens with the playoffs. But in college basketball, it is done to such an extreme where every point margin, is influenced in your ranking, in whether or not you're in the tournament. Like last year, San Diego State, the fact that they didn't blow out, a lot of the teams that they should have, where they nearly lost to Air Force. They had close games to San Jose. Heck, I can't remember if they lost one. I mean, New Mexico ended up losing to San Jose, but like San Diego State had so many of those close games. If San Diego State wins those games by 10 or 15 instead of 4 or 5, they might have made it out of Dayton. Or did they miss it? No, they were like the last 4 in.
Yeah,
like they would likely have avoided being in Dayton. So that's where these margins matter so much, and it's why Jared Calhoun, where 1 or 2 possessions maybe isn't making the difference, but again, he's not taking that chance.
No. 1 or 2 possessions over the course of a season does add up, though.
Yeah, if you're doing it like once every 2 or 3 games, if you're adding 2 or 3 or 5 points, again, you look at the last minute and a half, the Aggies go from 13 to 24. That absolutely makes a difference. 20 to 24 in a single instance, that's not going to make a huge deal, but do that 5 times in a season, and that makes a slight bump. It might take you from your offensive rating from, 39th to 36th, and your defensive rating from 45th to 42nd. And those slight bumps can move you up 1 or 2 Ken Palm spots. Like, imagine the Aggies end up at 29th. Being 29th, just based on human psychology, looks a lot better than being 31st.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, it's true. 1 or 2 spots, but what happens when you see, you're buying toys for your kids and it says $29.99? That looks better than 31
30.
or 30. Like, that's human psychology. So when the committee sees, this is a top 30 team versus top 31, like that can have an impact. And so that's why they did it.
A couple more texts here from 9315, basically asking the same question about Utah State meeting BYU in the tournament. I haven't seen any brackets that would put them next to each other. But I haven't looked at all the brackets. As you mentioned, there's 113 out there. I haven't looked at all of them, but it wouldn't be in the first round for sure. Utah State would have to win. Both teams would have to win to potentially meet each other in the second, but I don't know. I haven't looked at all the brackets to tell you that. And would it be interesting? Sure. I mean, it'd be big for the state of Utah. And if that's the only time those teams can figure out a way to play each other, then we'll take it. But I haven't seen Utah State matched up. There's don't think so many different brackets to look at. I haven't examined them all.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I could maybe
they change every day.
You can maybe ask ChatGPT. You might be able to find somebody, but because I'm not searching all 113 brackets manually. But I'd suspect that none of them do, largely because I don't think the seed lines match up at all. For one, a lot of them are having the Aggies as a 7 or 8 seed.
Yeah.
They range from 5, where Haslametrics, for some reason, really likes the Aggies as a 5 seed, even though it's a massive outlier. Where
Bracket Matrix currently has BYU as a 6.
Yeah. So they're mostly actually, to be honest, they have the exact same seed range. So they're trending more to 5 and 6, where Utah State is 7 and 8. But both of them, technically, their high and low is 5 is the high, 9 is the low.
Though BYU just lost one of their key guys.
Yeah, Richie Saunders.
So they've struggled here the last few weeks, so they could slip down. But again, if they're on the same seed line, they're not going to face each other.
Yeah, they won't face each other. Like the way they would face each other, like for instance, Utah State would be in the 7-10 game right now, according to Bracket Matrix. They play the winner of the 2-15. BYU's not close to either of those.
No.
Now, if they got down to 6-11 and 5-12, like if BYU stayed as a 6 seed, then, well, they'd have to rise to a 5 seed, and Utah State would have to rise all the way to the 6 seed. Heck, even then it doesn't work, or does it?
It just doesn't look very likely
Yeah,
right now.
and again, that you'd be looking at second round matchups. So like, if the Aggies fell all the way to a 10 seed, like that's kind of your most likely, is that the Aggies falling to a 10 seed and BYU falls into a 7 seed. Like that's or 6-11. Like that would be the most likely matchup for the Aggies. But currently, with how high Utah State is on bracketology, it's close to its high water mark on the entire season for bracketology. There's no way they'd meet if you started the tournament today. But things could fall where the Aggies do end up playing BYU, but it would basically be Utah State falling to a 10 or 11 seed.
Yeah, Utah State would have to make more movement downwards in order to make that happen. I just want to remind you about our good friends at Napa Auto Parts. They've got batteries, headlights, wiper blades. All are in stock and available right now. And they've got Chemical Guys car wash detailing kits, only $49.99. And we saw some snow. It didn't stick, but there's going to be more that will come. So if you still need some Blue Heat ice melt, they've got it available at $10. They also have air fresheners, snow scrapers, shop towels, sea foam, and more. It's all on sale at your locally owned Napa store from Preston to Providence. And Jason, shifting topics here for a minute. This is a story that we followed a little bit. I had a chance to talk to Bryce Larson. He's a radio host at a station down in Salt Lake. They follow Utah Valley very closely. They do a lot of play-by-play for the Wolverines. And there's been a major dispute between Utah Valley and the WAC. The WAC is falling apart. They are disbanding. It's everybody's jumping ship. And other schools in this state are also leaving and going other places. But the difference is Utah Valley has been assessed a $1 million exit fee while these other schools have not. And so Utah Valley says, well, we're not going to pay that. And in response, the WAC's like, oh, yes, you are. Or we won't feature you on any of our televised games, and you can't compete in our postseason tournament, and you can't compete, you can't represent our conference in the NCAA tournament. So it's gotten kind of nasty between these two institutions. And some news today from Jeff Goodman reporting that Utah Valley kind of going back on the offensive here because the WAC filed some court documents kind of preventing Utah Valley from participating in Texas. And Utah Valley's like, well, they don't hold any jurisdiction over us. And so Jeff Goodman earlier today saying that their legal team has filed in Texas, claimed there's no jurisdiction in Texas. Additionally, the Wolverines filed a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction in Utah saying that against the conference for what they're calling punitive and unnecessary actions against their student athletes and the university.
Yeah, it's
gotten kind of ugly here.
It's a bunch of bull crap what the WAC is doing. They're mad at Utah Valley because they were part of the cascade that kind of led because Utah Valley going to the Big West. And so, yeah, they're just mad.
Utah Tech, Southern Utah, they're going to the Big Sky, but they don't have an exit fee.
Yeah, so it's where the WAC is being hypocritical, and their athletic directors are just the
Conference
commissioner basically just giving Utah Valley the middle finger as they slowly sink into the quicksand and sink into irrelevance.
Because the problem is that Utah Valley acted first, and then all these other schools kind of followed, and because at the time there was dialogue. I mean, there was stuff in the bylaws, I should say, that expressly said, if you leave, this is your cost to exit. But other schools started to leave, and they were assessed the same thing because the conference could no longer exist. And so Utah Valley is like, it's the John Travolta meme. They got the hands up, kind of looking around like, why? What's going on? Why are you picking on us? And the thing that bothers me the most is if there's a dispute here, settle it in the courts. Let the players play. Like, let the student athletes continue to compete. This is very petty on the side of the WAC for withholding these opportunities from the student athletes. They have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's just Yeah, they just look terrible. And like when they posted their statement to social media, they were trying to hide comments and keep people from, commenting on. They just wanted to put their statement out there, try and make themselves look like the good guys, and then try and run as fast as they can to avoid all of the very justified criticism for, again, just being petty and dumb and hypocritical. Like, if they were making everyone pay that exit fee, yeah, sure, but there are teams that weren't forced to do that. And so when you're being selective, that's where you're just in the wrong.
They're directing all their ire to the first school that caused the dominoes to fall.
And that's just being a terrible person. You can't do that. They'll think themselves justified, but in the end, everyone knows that they're wrong, and deep down those people kind of know they're wrong too, but again, they're letting their feelings of pettiness overcome their sense of judgment and their moral compass and whatnot. So I imagine Utah Valley is going to end up having some success in this legal battle, especially in getting that temporary restraining order, because to be able to play in the WAC tournament, I doubt that the WAC is going to be able to keep them from competing in that with all these legal avenues. I'm not a legal expert, so I can't say that it's a slam dunk case, pun slightly intended. But yeah, Utah Valley has a case in that it's valuable for them because this is one of their best chances to make the NCAA tournament in the last while. Like, while they've been good, they've had Grand Canyon in their conference, who's been a tough team to overcome. And Utah Valley, they're ranked 88 in KenPom. The next closest team is 120. Now, technically, they're in third place in the conference right now, but it's because they're 8-4, and Cal Baptist and Utah Tech are 9-4. They're a half game behind.
Yeah, it's a very tight race at the top. So they very much have an opportunity to be the automatic qualifier out of the WAC.
Yeah, so
they're very much in the mix.
Yeah, they very easily could end up winning that conference tournament. Of course, regular season title isn't going to be the important thing, but like clearly, they're one of three teams that are at the top that are beginning for the title. They have the most balanced team where they're good on both offense and defense, where Cal Baptist and Utah Tech are a bit one-sided one way or the other. So yeah, I think that Utah Valley is going to have a pretty solid case that they're going to be appearing in the conference tournament, and again, decent chance that they end up winning it all.
More details here from Jeff Goodman. Says that they're one of the big points here that this is kind of all hinging on is that there was this commitment letter that was signed by all WAC presidents back in 2024. And that kept UVU from leaving for another unnamed conference. But that should have kept any school from leaving. But this letter that was signed by all the WAC presidents in 2024 was rescinded by the same presidents of the WAC the same presidents in the conference at last year's basketball tournament. And that was about the same time that UVU received their invite to the Big West. So they had this letter to keep everyone together. And then the president said, you know what? Let's not do this, because the writing was on the wall. Everybody was going to leave. So they rescinded this letter, and then Utah Valley accepts their invite to the Big West. So they make it official that they're leaving. But the WAC, as a conference, their executive team were pouting over this and wanted to make an example of Utah Valley. And then all the other teams exit scot-free. It seems really petty.
Yeah, and this is where you're trying to enforce the thing. Well, you all signed a letter saying you're going to stay. Well, guess what? If the people who all sign a contract mutually agree to break that contract, that's just how contracts are. If me and Eric sign a contract saying we're going to do something, then me and Eric get together and say, you know what? This is a bad idea on both our parts. We're going to rescind this contract. That's it. Yeah, the contract isn't binding to either of us. If it's not going to apply, and even if it's a group of people.
And who has the power? The WAC presidents, the university presidents, or the WAC as the institution?
Yeah. Again, they're just having a power trip as they go down in defeat. They're trying, with my last breath. What's that line from? It's either Shakespeare, but it's also in Star Trek.
You lost me on two things that I don't pay attention to.
From hell's heart, I stab at thee. That's the line. Again, I can't remember if it's
I'll take your word for that.
It appears in Star Trek, but I can't remember if he's quoting somebody or not. It's Khan. That's what it's the villain who's from hell's heart. I stab at thee, like, because he's about to die, but he, well, go watch Star Trek.
Okay.
But that's basically what they're doing. Is while they're detonating the bomb as they are defeated as everyone else leaves, and they're trying to catch at least Utah Valley in the blast radius. So yeah, it's just them being petty and dumb, and this is Again, the fact that we have to go to the courts to solve all this, because you have Kansas State being stupid, where they invented a reason so that they don't have to pay 19 or 18 or 19 million dollars.
You made us feel bad by your post-game comments, so
Yeah.
that's our cause.
Like, my goodness, like,
Whew, thin skin, maybe?
yeah, it's just so dumb. But again, it's not that they were really offended. It's just they're trying to drum up an excuse. If it wasn't that, they would have come up with something else. You know, I mean, Utah State kind of doing that to Blake Anderson, though, with a little bit more justification for that, based on, well, you know, academics, among other things. But, you know, and heck, a bunch of teams have tried this where they say, we're firing you for cause, and the for cause is really shady. The for cause kind of has to be there, because you look at when Michigan fired their football head coach. Yeah, that was for cause. But like, is you know, mean post-game press conferences, that's why that's what you're going to lay your justification on? Yeah, good luck with that. And Tom Mars is going to become the winner of all this.
Yeah.
He's just going to make a bunch of money off of that.
I want to let you know about our good friends at Mountain Valley Heating and Air. Indoor air in our area can be up to 5 times dirtier than outdoor air, especially during these dry winter months. Dry air keeps the dust and allergens floating longer, sending them deeper into your lungs, making sickness more likely. So Mountain Valley Heating and Air, they've got some help for that. They can install high-efficiency steam humidifiers, use 1 gallon of water, no waste. It can improve your air quality. Call 435-753-5170 for a free in-home air quality assessment, courtesy of Mountain Valley Heating and Air. Certainly, tanking has been a big topic in the NBA. What the Utah Jazz did, how people have reacted to that. I think there's a lot of shady stuff with betting and gambling markets and predictive markets kind of weighing in on this. Another reason why the NBA is kind of making a lot of noise about this. But Mark Cuban, who formerly was the guy for the Dallas Mavericks, took to social media earlier today. He's added a few other things since his original post, but he's basically saying there is a case for tanking in the NBA, and the league should not be that concerned about it. They should be concerning themselves over what makes a good experience for people to come watch a game. Where the league is pricing people out of the game, and they're focusing on the wrong things. And if the NBA got back to just making a good fan experience, and I get it, part of that is you want to go watch a good game on the court. If best players are not going to play, that plays a role. So he's maybe a little bit two-sided here. But he basically goes into this kind of a long history as to why he thinks tanking is an important part of the game, and it's a vital part for teams to rebuild and change who they are in a short amount of time.
Well, it's not so much that tanking should be part, because you don't like to see teams tank. What you should be okay with is that some teams are just going to be bad, and maybe some teams are going to lean a little bit more into losing. You don't want to see them like pulling their good players so that they can deliberately lose, but so don't embrace that, but generally just kind of be okay with it and look the other way a little bit. Because, yeah, you look at what the NBA has done over the last, 10, 15 years, however long it's been since, Adam Silver took over. One of the underrated things for me is that the NBA has lost its team identities. When you turn on an NFL game, you can tell right away who's playing without looking at the score bug. You can tell by, looking at, obviously a lot of the fields have a unique feel to them. The jerseys, you can pretty much tell right away. The logos and the end zones, all of that, you can tell what's going on. You start an NBA game and the court is bright green, and one of the teams is wearing yellow, but it turns out that's the Jazz, not the Lakers or the Suns or whoever. And there's a team wearing neon purple, and that one's not the Jazz, and it's not the Toronto Raptors. It's somehow the Nets or something. And so you have an NBA that has lost its visual identity. You have a commissioner who is okay with openly calling this a highlight league because he's not willing to lower the price on streaming or anything like that. You also have blackouts and things like that. So the league is harder and harder to watch, and they're leaning way more into money. Like leagues need to be concerned with money because like the NFL leans into money and they have their own issues, but not nearly to the degree of the NBA. And so the NBA, you know, why do they go with all these jerseys? Because it makes them money, because fans buy the jerseys. They release like 2 or 3 new jerseys every year for every single team. And it's because they want to make, you know, fans buy the jerseys. The NFL doesn't really do that. They've flirted with that, but not nearly as much. Half the time they have different jerseys, it's throwback jerseys. And fans love it because it's this fun little one-off, and you wear the jerseys that your team wore in the 1970s, and you can sell them but it's still part of the team identity because it's just the team identity from 50 years ago. Well, and fans can still identify with that, especially the older fans.
But even that, beyond just specialty jerseys and things like that, like you knew you had a core of players from year to year. That was your team. Anymore, you might have 1 or 2 guys that are your core coming back from season to season. It used to be 4 or 5 guys. Like you knew that was your group for several years. That was your core group. But anymore, it's so different from year to year. It's hard to really know, like, because people buy into other people. Like they get behind other personalities. Yes, there's a brand that they like the Utah Jazz. Like we're around here, like we like the Jazz, but there are seasons that excitement for that team will ebb and flow based on who's there and based on, do we have a connection with those guys? Do we feel like they're going to do something? And are they consistently there for a while? Like we can look back in the last 30 years and have different segments of Utah Jazz teams, and they're for pretty good stretches of years together because of who was there, who were wearing those jerseys together, fighting on the court for seasons on end. Like, okay, we knew that was the Stockton and Malone years, and that was the Williams and Boozer years and things like that. Like we can identify those segments. But it's becoming increasingly hard to really look at, oh, these are the Knicks because we know this is their core. There's some elements of that, but not to the same degree that it used to be.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily place that blame on Adam Silver because that has a lot to do with what the players have decided to do and what their agents have kind of conspired to do.
Partially true, but also the second apron is making it really difficult for teams to construct their rosters in certain ways, to have veterans on their team, keep guys for longer. Because the trade deadline, we saw a lot of teams like jettison veteran guys or people who were part of their teams because they had to get under that second apron threshold and go younger and cheaper just to keep out of that cap that affects them in the draft.
Yeah, but they're maintaining their core players because who did Boston get rid of? Did they get rid of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? No, and that's who their team identifies with. When Oklahoma City ultimately has to go through that same process, are they going to get rid of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams? No, and so when you talk about teams being identified with a couple of players, it usually only is a couple of players. And so I don't think the second apron. I think the second apron is one of the better things the NBA has done because they've forced teams away from this super team era where they pay like 3 or 4 players and they force teams to actually build teams. Of course, then they work against themselves by keeping teams from tanking, which is the way to build under the second apron
and
system.
To keep your costs low.
So that's where the NBA is kind of shooting itself in the foot, while it actually accomplishes something in a sense. So there are things that the NBA has done well, but there's some things they can't control that have gone wrong. And I don't want to blame Adam Silver for everything because he's not at fault for the decline of the All-Star game. He's not at fault for players asking for trades like, James Harden quitting on 5 different teams, Paul George quitting on 3 different teams, Kawhi Leonard quitting on like 2 different teams. Like that's not, Jimmy Butler quitting on like there's so many of these players that quit over and over and over on their teams and constantly ask to be traded and then get traded for 5 picks, then 4 picks, then 3 picks. And eventually you can get them for like 1 or 2 picks or a young prospect. So I don't want to blame Adam Silver for that. But there are things that I feel like are somewhat in his control. And again, the business side of things with the jerseys, the gambling, like the fact that they are potentially beholden to gambling. Like there was some stuff roaming around social media, almost like trying to confirm that Adam Silver was pushed by gamblers. But if you actually look at the quote, it's somebody who was speculating about the same as we were. anybody else on social media, and people are taking that as gospel that a gambling company called up Adam Silver and told him to find the Jazz. I'm not necessarily convinced that was happening, but I mean, they had a summit at the NBA All-Star panel where a bunch of gambling executives and some people who pretend they aren't gambling executives, but that's what they are.
With predictive markets, yeah.
You know, they're all gamblers, and they're talking about the future of the NBA and how that's going to interact with prediction markets and gambling. So we know that that's a big thing that the NBA has leaned into, and that's been bad for the league. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It's bad for the league. Gambling is bad for basketball. It's bad for the way that fans interact with the sport. It's bad for the sport because, unlike with the Jazz tanking, gambling actually truly does mess with the integrity of the league. We've had like 2 or 3 scandals already where the actual integrity of NBA basketball games has been materially impacted by gambling. And so the NBA leaning into that is the most damning thing that Adam Silver has done, in the fact that he's more concerned about tanking, which has been part of the league since the 80s. Like, the whole reason we have a lottery is because teams were complaining that tanking existed. So it has been in the league for about 50 years, and yet something that's been around, and again, the rate of teams tanking has pretty much always just gone up and down. Some years there's more teams that tank. Sometimes there's barely any that tank. And that's just, and
When
that's
you have
just
an
that's
historically
just,
rich draft class, there are a lot of teams that are going to want to be in the mix.
Yeah, and you know, Adam Silver has worked against himself where he flattened the lottery odds, and that made tanking worse because it's more beneficial to tank to be 7 than it is to just, you know, be 9 or 10. So that's something where they've worked against themselves with gambling and with tanking. Like, they're focusing on the wrong things. You know, make the experience better for the fans. Lower the price of going to the All-Star game. You know, where we talk about entertaining the fans, like, what fans are there? The stadiums are 1/3 full because the only people who can go were celebrities who have nothing else to do, and, you know, a bunch of rich tech people who also have nothing else to do. Like, you know, they had the All-Star game in Utah, and most of the people attending the events aren't even from Utah. You know, it's a bunch of rich Utah executives and a bunch of out-of-state people who can afford to buy the tickets and just want to go hang out with all the celebrities that are there. So what the NBA can control, they're not doing a good job with, because they're not making the fan experience better. And there's a level of influence that they can have on the media. You never want the NBA to like take control of the media and tell them what to talk about. But the fact that the NBA hasn't even tried to push back against the media and what they've done with turning it into basically a 2-tiered system where big markets and the teams that stars are on are the only ones that matter. And nobody wanted to talk about Oklahoma City. In fact, they still don't talk about Oklahoma City.
They still don't talk about it.
Every time I go to ESPN, there's a video about Kendrick Perkins talking about the Lakers' chances to win a championship. And I'm like, maybe why don't we talk about an Oklahoma City team that is one of the best teams that we have seen in our lifetime?
Right.
And so the NBA, like, again, don't go all fascist on them and take over the NBA media, but push back. Like, the NFL has had a media arm, and they can subtly, like, you know, set your talking points, talk about the entire league. That's one of the best things about the NFL is that they will talk about everybody. You know, sure, there's the joke about always talking about the Cowboys, and that kind of exists. But if the Vikings are good, they talk about the Vikings. If the Jaguars are good, they talk about the Jaguars. If the Cowboys are good, they incessantly talk about the Cowboys. But there, you know, there is that extra little bit that they give to the Cowboys, and maybe to some. But like, they talk about the Chiefs forever and ever, and the Chiefs are in Kansas City. Soon they'll actually be in Kansas, but you know, or are they moving to the Missouri side? I can't remember which side they're moving to. They're moving from one side to the other. But yeah, so the NBA could at least push back against that and shift it toward this league-wide. Talk about everybody. Talk about every star. But all of those things that they could be influencing and make this a better fan experience by making it more accessible, by, you know, lifting all of the stars in their league, by lifting all of the teams. The NBA has done a very poor job with what should be undisputedly the second most popular sport in America. But it feels like they're losing ground to college basketball, for one. there are probably more people who are watching the NCAA tournament than are the NBA finals, and people who are genuinely more excited to watch March Madness than the NBA finals. And that should never happen. Hockey and baseball, where the NBA should be leaps and bounds ahead of those two sports. Baseball is kind of recovering from a bit of a slump that it was
having a renaissance right now.
Hockey is beginning to, really catch up. They're still definitely steps behind. They're starting to claim they're overtaking baseball. So they're showing growth, but and F1 is becoming more popular, having European sports, sports car racing and F1. Are you going to let yourself be overtaken by other sports because you can't present yourself properly to the fan base and you want to lose your identity visually, in the media, perception of your own integrity? All these different things. And it's why people are muttering around today about whether or not Adam Silver is going to be fired, because he's done such a horrible job where the NBA has lost ground to the NFL under his stewardship. And that's not something that should be happening.
No, I mean, look, Cooper Flagg, for all exciting he is, Dallas is only 19-35. They're just 2 games ahead of the Jazz, above the Jazz in the standings.
Yeah.
Dallas is having a bad season, but there is something where the NBA is highlighting Cooper Flagg and his play.
Yeah.
They're not talking about Dallas as a tanking team. They should be. They're not winning very many games, but they get obsessed picking on a few teams while only focusing on highlighting a few others. And it's lazy storytelling in the NBA media, I should say.
Yeah.
But Mark Cuban, who is still connected to the Mavericks, he's not totally out.
There's rumors that he's trying to buy back the Mavericks, but I don't think it's going to work. So I don't think the Mavericks' current owner wants to sell.
No, but he's had some interesting narratives on social media today about tanking and his team's history of it. Just forewarning, there is a little bit of language in there, so just heads up on that.
He got the Mavericks fined $700,000 because he spoke openly about it while he was still part owner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's everybody can do it. You just can't talk openly about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is stupid.
Well, which you shouldn't. It's kind of stupid that you can't say it out loud, but you can't be having that. It's a line that,
well, you can't
it's a line that feels stupid that it exists, but there are very good reasons why that line exists.
Yeah, it's we're purposely throwing games. Okay, you can't.
You can't be admitting that out loud. But
No.
It's one of those things that's better left unsaid but fully understood.
Give our young guys opportunities to develop.
Yeah.
And they may not win very many games doing it, but that's the direction we're heading as a team.
There's a coded language there.
Yeah.
So we have a few more things to get to. One, we have 1913 on the text line. Leave also the same on our YouTube chat line. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also just use the chat feature. We'll try and keep an eye out for it if anybody wants to comment there. But asking if Utah State will keep Jared Calhoun, which is a question we're probably going to see a lot in the next couple of weeks.
It's just going to start ramping up.
Yeah, we brought it up yesterday. We had a bit of a few minutes where we talked about coaches going elsewhere. My basically words there were just be careful where you go. Because Kansas State, they fired their head coach. And as we mentioned, they're going to be at a battle over $19 million. They're going to spend half that on lawyers' fees.
Do you want to go to a place that's going to fire their coach on that kind of a thin skin, loose basis?
So it's, they fired him over performance, and their excuse is that. Because that's what's really going on. He was already on his way out. They just found an excuse to do it now.
Yeah.
So, and now they're trying to keep him away from, again, $19 million. My impression is that there's a decent chance Utah State keeps Jared Calhoun, but every single Power 4 job that opens up, or Power 5, major conference, every time a job opens up there, first 2 names on the list are going to be St. Louis's head coach and Utah State's head coach. And depending on how big the job is, there's going to be some real weight behind that. Because you look at Kansas State, that's not a massive job. He'll make more money, but only $1 million more. He's not doubling his salary. Yeah, it's slightly raising it and then going to a conference where he has vastly fewer resources. He'd have almost
compared to his peers.
Yeah, compared to his peers, he'd again theoretically move up, but he'd go from being a big fish in a relatively small pond to being a slightly bigger fish in an enormous pond. And I think Jared Calhoun is a little bit smarter than that, where I think he'll more likely jump for, a much more impressive job. But I obviously can't guarantee that. I don't necessarily know Calhoun on a deeply personal level. But again, what I can tell you right now is that he is doing his job right now as if he's staying.
Yeah.
Like,
will they be able to keep him? I don't know. They're going to try. They'd like to.
yeah,
I know that.
they'll probably offer him a little bit more of a raise, and like when they get to
there are teams that are going to come after it.
Yeah, and this is also part of why the whole Show Me thing, like that 6-month initiative, that's why like they're trying to raise as much money in the very near future, so that when Jared Calhoun in a month or two is, being courted by a Kansas State, they can say
Cincinnati,
or Cincinnati,
or
they
somewhere else.
They can be like, hey, maybe we can't offer you a $8 or $9 million roster, but we can offer you like a $4 or $5 million roster. I mean, that'd be really nice if the Aggies could pull that kind of money off, but several $1 million, and chance to be in the Pac-12 where your path to an NCAA tournament is just about guaranteed. Being able to play teams like Gonzaga and San Diego State, and being, again, a relatively big fish in a decently sized pond with the Pac-12. Is that going to convince Calhoun? I can't tell you. I couldn't tell you, even if I wanted to, because I don't know. And that's the reason why, is I don't know.
No, yeah, we
But
don't know.
I think that much like they had a decent chance to keep him this last offseason and they managed to hang on to him, they'll have a decent chance to keep him this offseason, and we'll see how things go.
5338 texting in. Stat that blew my mind. I guess we didn't do the stat or player.
Yeah, it's technically kind of on our schedule here.
So 5338 offers a consideration. U.S. Olympic women's hockey team is in the gold medal game against Canada. They have won their previous games by a combined score of 31-1.
Yeah, that's
31-1.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And they shut out Canada in their game. I think it was 5-0 or 4. I forget which one, but and it was like the first time the Canada team had been shut out either ever or in a very long time. So the U.S. Olympic women's hockey team is becoming just clearly the best in the world. Much like the U.S. has the best women's soccer team, they're starting to generate that Olympic hockey team to being the best in the world as well.
Yeah. This hockey tournament now on the men's side too, got a lot of NHL guys back in it, and it's been pretty exciting tournament on the men's side. So excited to see how that continues to play out. This is where, for me, the Olympics really starts to ramp up. And there's some sports in fields that are kind of interesting early on, but it just feels weird when you have gold medal matches happening like the day after the opening ceremonies. It just doesn't feel real. Aren't you supposed to lead up to this?
Yeah,
but
didn't you just start?
Most people don't realize is that there's actually competition that starts before the opening ceremonies. But anyway, it's been fun to check in on what's going on at the Winter Olympics and know that it's going to be here in state of Utah in 8 years.
Yeah, at least they managed to finish the hockey arena, because I know that was one thing.
Yeah, there was
a lot of things said about whether or not they would actually get it done. It's like, we don't have a backup plan. It's like, it's this or nothing, I guess. I don't know what they would have done if they didn't complete it to the point where they could be safe about it. But nice that they actually did get it done.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. Another one here from 9315. The answer is, don't worry about USU fans. Need to have a better mindset and say what we going to keep Coach Calhoun and just relax, because most of it just get click or get some else interested in taking a job or getting a raise, and Coach would never go.
Yeah. At this point, the raise that Calhoun is getting to go to a bigger school is getting smaller and smaller. That gap is, surprisingly enough, shrinking. Maybe not for the biggest jobs, but a lot of the kind of lower level Power 4 coaches aren't getting paid that much more relative. He's making 2/3 or 3/4 of what some of those teams are making, as opposed to it being Utah, quadrupling Craig Smith's salary. Calhoun's not going to quadruple his salary going to Kansas State.
Right. That gap, to Utah State's credit and Booster's credit, is shrunk. But it's also what are you walking into? And these are the external factors besides just what's your roster. I mean, what's your salary, What's your fan support? What's your community support? Do I have a good student section? Do I have a path to success? Because there are programs right now in college basketball, like they're struggling and they're going to fire their coaches. And they're going to say, look, we've got this budget we're going to give you, and we've got this budget you can spend on your roster, but do you really have a path to success? And at Utah State, he has a path to success. And if he stays one more year at least, and continues to have the success that he's having now, it's not just, can I go somewhere and increase my own personal salary, but can I be a little bit choosy about where I go so I can walk into a situation where I know I have that path to success?
Yeah. Like you look at Kansas State, their last 7 years. Yeah, they did have a run to, I think it was the Elite Eight.
Yeah, they've had some success in their past.
But it's the one time in the last 7 years. They then had like an 8-year run where they're decent. But like, again, outside of some of these quick spurts, they have been really inconsistent. And again, we talked about the head coaching job rankings. You look at the Big 12, Cincinnati's 8, Kansas State is 9. Like, are you ready to be a middling team in the pack in the Big 12, where you're going up against Mega Millions rosters in Kansas, Arizona, BYU, Houston, Iowa State, even Baylor and in Texas Tech putting up a lot? Like, that's just not something that Kansas State is prepped to compete with. So, yeah, you might luck out in the 1 year where, Jerome Tang was able to do that, but then it's just kind of downhill as attrition slowly takes over and your roster just can't compete. Like Utah State, you can build a roster that can compete even with a little bit lower resources. They don't rank at the top of the Mountain West, but they're improving, and you can still build enough with the resources that you have to build an NCAA caliber team.
Well, and the challenges that you face here at Utah State, like building a roster or maintaining a roster, those challenges are still going to exist at the Big 12 or the ACC. There's still going to be a challenge of building your roster and keeping your roster.
Yeah,
because there's always somebody else who's willing to pay more to steal away one of your top prospects.
If you have the Big 12 Player of the Year as a junior, he's going somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, so you're not like taking care of those problems by moving.
Baylor couldn't even keep
it with you. They're still there.
Baylor couldn't keep its star point guard from a conference rival.
Yeah.
Even after they had him signed.
Just because you think you've got a bigger budget to play with your roster, that you're going to have more stability. No, you don't.
Yeah. So
that is college basketball, regardless of the level you're competing at.
Yeah. So we'll see what Jared Calhoun ultimately decides. But yeah, for me, I know this question is going to keep coming up. I'm not going to just turn my nose up at it. I know we're going to get a lot more as the rumors heat up and as all the national writers say that Jared Calhoun is a goner. They've been saying it for months already, but it's only going to heat up. Like,
and you know what?
Just going to enjoy it while it lasts.
Okay, it's going to happen, but let's not wring our hands and pull our hair out worrying about where he's going to end up. Let's focus on like what's happening right now.
Yeah, let's look at the last 6 games.
Utah State's having a good, successful run right now. Let's enjoy that.
They got 6 games left in the regular season, plus the Mountain West tournament, plus a likely game in the NCAA tournament. Let's focus on that.
Yeah, don't let that uncertainty spoil the enjoyment you should be having right now.
Yeah,
because that's college basketball. It's college sports. I did not have a stat or a player. But I don't know if you had some.
I had a stat and a player. There were a couple of different stats, both relating to Utah State basketball. One is that the Aggies had 3 20-point scores in the same game. It was the first time they did it since the Ryan Odom era. I don't know. Do you recall when it happened? Do you think you could guess? So it happened it was that 2022-23 season.
Okay. I'm trying to think who it would have been. I don't know who the opponent would have been, but I'm trying to think of who the players would have been.
Yeah.
Would it have been, now I'm spacing on names.
The exact same thing happened to me when I was trying to think.
The Ukrainian kid.
Yeah, Max Shulga. He was one of them in that particular game.
Would have been Mason.
Mason, I don't think was on the team at that point.
No, okay.
Or I think he was redshirting that year.
Redshirting that year. Bairstow?
He was on the team, but he was not one of them.
Ashworth, excuse me.
Funnily enough, he was on the team, and that was his All Mountain West season, but he was actually not one of those players.
Wow.
Give you a hint, one of them was British.
Oh.
And then the other one, I believe, currently plays for the Washington City Go-Go.
Okay. Yeah, I can see his face and I can't think of his name. Was Justin Bean?
Justin Bean wasn't on the team. He
it wasn't
graduated.
him. I can't think of the names.
So it was Taylor Funk and
yes.
Dan Akin.
Oh, okay.
And then Max Shulga. They all did it. They all had 20-plus points against San Diego. And that was the game where that one player went for like 43, 44 points. And it went to like overtime. And the Aggies ended up winning at San Diego against a team that ended up in like the 260s in the net or something like that. But they managed to sneak out that win. That was a really interesting year for the Aggies. Really high-powered offense.
Yes, it was.
But ended up flaming out in the NCAA tournament when the offense decided not to show up because, of course, that's what was going to happen.
You're right.
In the NCAA tournament. It's not the only time it's happened, too. They've had some of those games. And then, my player of the week was Carson Templin. Carson Templin. Speaking of F1. Right. But, just his work in what he's really put in some of these games, and especially in that game against Memphis. I know he was one of a bunch of different players who had a great game, but want to give that shout out. Could probably have given it to Elijah Perryman as well, but Carson Templin deserving some shout out here.
Well, perfect at the free throw line, which is not normal for him.
Yeah, it was his highest. His previous high in free throws made without a miss was 4. And he went 10 for 10. So
yeah, love watching that guy play.
Yeah, that was something that was really good for him.
Yeah, cool. I would say yes. Those are good. I don't know if I have any others. Elijah Perryman had one great game, but if you look at the course of the week, I also want to give a shout out to the Skyview boys basketball team. This was a team that was probably underseeded in the rankings system that was utilized this year. Not exactly RPI; it's a different rankings system that UHSAA utilized with Max Preps.
I think it was just Max Preps system of ranking that they just went with, which is probably just some form of the RPI, maybe slightly better.
Yeah, but they felt a little disrespected and took it out on Snow Canyon. Beat them 66-33.
Poor Snow Canyon.
Yeah, and now their reward for that is taking on number 1 Provo tomorrow, which will be here on the Fan.
Yeah, that's where getting underseeded really gets you, because if you're a decent team, you're going to get a nice, easier opponent at home. Like, especially if you're like just outside of getting a first round bye, that means you get the worst team in the classification. It's the second round that really gets you.
Yeah, congratulations.
It's like when the Aggies have been in 8-9, like the year they won, and they got to face. Congratulations, you get to face 2-time, Naismith Player of the Year award winner Zach Eady.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, we got 4 of our local high school teams participating in the 4A boys and girls basketball playoffs Wednesday at Weber State University. Skyview boys will play Provo at 11:10. So we'll have that play-by-play coverage here on the Fan with Hurricane John Newbold on the call. At 4 o'clock, it'll be Mountain Crest versus Pineview, and that's girls basketball. And then at just a little bit before 6 o'clock, it's Ridgeline and Green Canyon. Green Canyon having a great season, the number 2 team in 4A. And the third time those teams will be facing each other. And that'll be on 100.9 Light FM and 104.5 The Ranch. Should mention the Mountain Crest game will be on 107.7. And it'll be Nick Zollinger and Terrell Baldwin on both of those games for the girls tomorrow late afternoon into early evening. So excited to have those games on our family of radio stations tomorrow.
Yeah. So that time, I believe we'll do it for us today. We've probably gone further as far as more time talking on air than we normally do, even though we're not quite at the 2-hour mark. But we've let off some of the commercial breaks for you. But we're happy to have been live on YouTube and a little bit on our normal airwaves. So this is part of the future where, again, we're expanding. We're not moving away from our home on the radio waves, but this is part of our move into the future of making ourselves more available, more ways to watch, more ways to interact with us, more ways to enjoy the content we put out, and we're continually working to make that content better and better. So thank you for watching on YouTube. Again, we're probably not going to do like live broadcasts every single day on YouTube for the immediate future, but
we're working on it.
In the near future, it's going to be a thing that's just going to run concurrently with our radio and our streaming broadcasts. So on the mobile app and on the website and over the radio waves. So that's something that is coming down the line. So make sure to follow us for all the best content.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.